Hi there, I'm James Saperchi, and this is Coffee and a Case Note. Team, today we're going to talk about the end of a partnership and what happens at the end of this very specific partnership. Now here we have 10 partners, and those partners are 5 family members and the spouses of each of those 5 family members. And the nature of the partnership is that the partnership is going to buy a piece of property, a piece of land, and the 10 partners are going to engage in some business operations in relation to it. There's a deed that is entered into between each of the respective partners. And what that deed says, in essence, is that on the partnership property, there's going to be a forestry business that we're going to operate into the future, another business as well. And that is going to be the partnership's business. But what we're also going to do is we're going to divide the property up into little separate sections, and each of those sections is going to belong to the individual partners. And crucially, when I say belong to each of the partners, it's going to be there for the exploiting by each of the individual partners to run their own business. Does that make sense? So the partnership will operate whatever forestry business comes to pass, but each individual partner, and not the partnership itself, will operate their own little businesses from the plots of land, selling blueberries. And so partner 1 might sell a lot of blueberries and make a lot of losses, and make a lot of investments, and that's theirs to deal with. Partner 2 might sell not that many, but might have a great margin, or whatever it might be. Each of these little plots is their own little separate venture, separate enterprise. Now, sadly, disputes between the partners kick off almost from the jump. We've got disputes about who's allocated which plot, who got the good land, who got the bad land, who's using what water. There are disputes about who is contributing to the partnership bank account that is the bank account that has all the money coming out of it for payment of water rates and bills and mortgage and that sort of thing. So the partners are not getting along that well. Over time, the relationship doesn't particularly improve, and there are a number of dams that are constructed on the partnership land. Now we come to 2020, and a water regulator, a representative of the relevant water regulator, comes to the property and says, "Oi, these dams are too big. You're going to have to go and engage in some remediation work, so you're going to have to reduce the size and scope of these dams. You've dammed too much water. That's not okay. That's a breach of the relevant regulations." And so those changes are made. And from that time, the 8 partners, who for today's discussion we're going to refer to as the plaintiffs, leave the property and stop operating it. And the 2 partners, who we're going to refer to for today's discussion as the defendants, remain on the property and continue to engage in their farming enterprise in their plots of land. Now, the astute among you will have picked up that we're using the word plaintiff and defendant. So what that means is we're discussing a piece of litigation today. And what happens is these 8 partners sue the other 2 partners, and what they want to do essentially is bring about the dissolution of the partnership and the appointment of an independent receiver to come and bring in all of the assets of the partnership and then pay out all of the debts, and if there's anything left over, distribute those remaining the remaining partnership assets in appropriate proportion, partner by partner. They want a receiver in. What the defendants do is they lodge a cross-claim, and they say, yeah, okay, the partnership should be dissolved, but what should happen is the court should make a buyout order, an order that we, these 2 defendants, can buy out the stake of the other 8 for 1.5 million. What these plaintiffs then do is amend their summons. And what they say in the amended summons is, no, let's amend it to say these 2 plaintiffs, 2 of the 8, are going to buy out all the other partners' interests, including the defendants, for 2 million. So this is the contest the court is facing with. What orders am I going to make in relation to the dissolution of this partnership? Now, happily, it's not always the case in relation to partnership disputes. The parties are in agreement. There are a number of uncontested issues before the court. Everyone agrees that the partnership should be dissolved, should be brought to an end. Everyone agrees that the assets of the partnership include the property, include this piece of land, because sometimes you have arguments about, is this asset partnership property, is that asset? And there are not big arguments about the use of plots of land and these sorts of things. So happily, there aren't those little tips for tat kind of arguments the court needs to deal with. Broadly speaking, we're talking about, is it going to be a receiver? Is it going to be the 1.5 million buyout the defendants want? Is it going to be the 2 million that the plaintiffs have changed their mind to now wanting? What are we going to do to deal with it? What the court does is firstly take a look at the relevant law. And in doing so, reassures itself that the court has a broad discretion on what to do at the dissolution of a partnership. Yes, it can appoint a receiver. Yes, it can make a buyout order. Yes, it can deal with matters by way of public auction, which, as I say, is often what a receiver will get up to, and this sort of thing. And so what the court decides needs to work through is the kind of competing orders here. Remember, the plaintiffs originally wanted a receiver, then the defendants said, we'll buy you out for 1.5. The defendants ended up leaving that position behind. Then the plaintiffs, remember, they amended their summons to say, no, two of us, these two here, will buy out the other 8 for 2 million. Now, what the plaintiffs said was, 2 million is a good price. A 2 million buyout by these plaintiffs is a good idea for a number of reasons. One of the reasons is this valuation evidence we've got here. And here's the valuation evidence. It says the value of the property is about 1.85 million. The value of the timber on the property is about 150 grand. And I should say just quickly, there was actually no forestry business ever operated by the partnership. So these are presumably just trees that are staying there on the property, yet to be realised, yet to have their commercial value realised. And they say that's the maths, right? 1.85 million for the property, 150 grand for the trees. That brings us to 2 million. What the court says is, that valuation evidence is from 15 months ago. Valuation is an art, not a science, right? It's difficult to be precise with it. And the valuers, they weren't brought in for cross-examination, but that does not mean the court has to accept the valuations entirely unamended. When the court says, noting the passage of time, the court does not have confidence that going ahead in total reliance on the form of these valuations would actually be the appropriate and beneficial next step for all the partners. And so the court says, no, we're not going to go ahead with the $2 million buyout. We're not going to go ahead in strict reliance on the valuation. We're going to appoint a receiver. And even though there are risks of, the 2.5% agent's fee and, the cost of an auction, and even though the plaintiffs have got a long association with the land, the court sort of bears these things in mind and says, well, regardless of all that, firstly, all the parties have a long association with the land, so the court doesn't need to turn its mind to that too much. But in the case where we've got quite old valuation evidence, the court thinks appointing a receiver would be the way that would achieve the best outcome for the parties, and so they are the orders that are proposed to be made. Hope that discussion assisted you, and I look forward to chatting again soon over another coffee and in respect of another case note. Cheers.